Can I join? You guys have too many people.
No. One thing I did in a room the other day is share my screen so we can all see the same things. Is that helpful?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
And then I shared it with the entire meeting and not the breakout room. So I would appreciate him not doing that. And then the woman who like runs it came running over, Vanessa, I'm like, I'm sorry, I shared to the whole meeting.
Anything else after?
I haven't looked at the comments yet.
I'm not. Which room did I just join?
Yeah, what room are we, guys?
No.
Financial one, the finance one.
Okay.
152. Yeah, it's nice place. Oh, I have it right here. Okay. It's a little conservative for me. Is it? Additional funding, we are. Additional funding. Okay. Let's go. Oh,
And scoring, right? Or is it
local scoring. Oh, yeah, I guess so.
additional funding and scoring?
Scoring, testing, right?
And assessor feedback to candidates? Is that those
I
three?
thought this room was
No. Feedback to candidates.
Candidates room. Yeah, I just
think
picked
so.
up.
Oh, it was,
Wait, I got it on my, I got it on my phone. Let me
Sorry.
see.
there were like 4 topics.
There were
The same from yesterday, though. It's just
Additional funding, scoring, feedback to candidates,
feedback to
and
candidates,
local
okay.
scoring.
Okay.
And local scoring? No, but local scoring got pulled.
They pulled it.
Oh,
today.
this
is
is
from
but I do
yesterday,
have an
so-
idea for local scoring that I got from, I was in local scoring yesterday and like for funding, I was thinking as an incentive, like, can we ask that money that would go towards like the assessment, can the universities get it? Cause they're doing their local scoring. So anyway. You were in that group yesterday.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we were trying to think about how to fund.
Yeah, it's how to fund or how to incentivize with
Mhm.
local scoring for people to do local scoring. And I was thinking, well, like,
Program sponsors should sponsor that for them using my thought is, if I'm using your product, you should make sure that your product is being well used or used appropriately. And the candidates are paying them so much money already.
yes,
That why not use that funding to make their assessment in local scoring settings better and providing that as the program sponsor? Is that what you're saying?
kind of, yes, because that money is being paid by the candidate and whatever to whoever. So why doesn't that money can that just go to support the local scoring and like the thoughts? Because the big thing when we were local scoring yesterday, and I know this is not local scoring, this is just an idea I had for funding, was that money can then, go towards that and see how that works. If that again would be an incentive, because the big thing was like, well, they don't get paid extra to do it. It's a lot of work. It takes time. So anyway, I don't know if we can fit something like that in here or if I have to go to local scoring later. But anyway, that was just a thought I had last night, just kind of from the discussions that we were having and
Mhm.
like, how can we problem solve that? So, but back to this topic, the additional funding for grants. See what is some of the feedback. This is the one where I closed your comment by accident.
You just erased the
I
comment.
did. I was like, oh, yeah, that's good. Check. And then I was like, no, what did I do? I agree. Give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, I was trying to do that, but I clicked the check mark instead.
Resolved.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
It's over now. Shayna, do you want it because you're here? Speak to it and then look at the revision that was added by a later group and so if does that meet the needs?
Yeah, so in the comment, what I was just thinking about is that this is a very specific recommendation. It says get a loan or have a loan or a grant program. If for some reason, I'm not an expert in sort of the realm of how these finances work, especially at the state level. So my worry was if someone will look at this and say, oh, no, we don't do loans or we don't do, and then the topic actually gets sort of away. But it seems like the spirit of this is how do we make this affordable or free for candidates? Because we believe that people shouldn't have to pay for this assessment. And so I was trying to think about how we might broaden the options. So someone can say, there's another way to make this free, even if it's not a loan, if that still remains on the table. So that's what the comment was about.
And I remember being in this, I think, and helping create this kind of, because I remember us talking about like the Apple assumption loans that we had talked about the teacher forgiveness loans,
Mhm.
like the different loans that we have got I think currently the teacher
Residents.
that loan, I think
Loans
that
too, yeah.
$20,000 that's being offered, if it's still being offered, I know a
Mhm.
lot of teachers use that. So it was kind of going with that. How did they do those kinds of grant loans, and then how can this be incorporated to kind of do the same thing, but of course at a lower cost? And now that we're talking about it, I wonder if like, well, then they'll increase the cost of the TPA now. Well, because we're going to get a loan, so we can make it, instead of $300, we can make it $600. So I guess that's my fear as well, is because it's not your money, right? It's someone else's money. It's the state's money. It's through a loan. So now I get to increase the price for this. Right? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying like patterns exist, and that's typically what happens even with like tuition, right? Like, oh, but I can get a loan for $20,000. So now my tuition increased by a certain percentage. So
That's kind of why I like the second, whoever put the second statement in there. That was Eugenia.
No, it wasn't me,
It
but I think someone read the comment.
Yeah, and then did that. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think based on what you're saying now, the last sentence, this may be through systems such as loan, maybe we can add grant, stipend, voucher,
let's do that.
or some other options other option that is doable.
And we really are gonna have to partner with the testing services, because like you said, we don't want them to increase the price.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, we'll fund it.
Or, and maybe
Grant, you said?
Rebecca, yeah, grant. And maybe we can say that take out that is doable, but just other options or other options.
I agree with that. Take out, because someone, I don't know.
So it's not doable,
It's not,
sorry.
you can't do, yeah.
So maybe something too about without increasing the cost of a test.
What,
Can we check out some and just say or other option?
I think that's okay.
Is that okay?
well, I also feel like if,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Some, the
Oh,
word
yeah,
some seems
or
like
other options, yeah.
seems extraneous there.
But if we're
don't have-
making it affordable or free, do we have to put without increasing the cost of the assessment? Because it's,
I think I think you're right in that, but I
Oh,
guess
yeah.
the clarification on that is just to, again, to hold the testing services accountable for not increasing increasing the cost in order to say, ooh, like you said, there's more money available or whatever.
Yes.
But I don't know if it's redundant to say that or
We can
not.
just leave it there for now and then kind of put that idea there. And again, I'm not trying to be like, I guess I believe everyone has good intentions. But when people see opportunities like that, and especially in assessments, I totally get it, oh, well, now we can revamp some assessments and that's cost, and then just push that cost. And it's always the cost onto the people below them. It's never the cost. Although I think COVID did hit them quite hard, but
can I, the first two sentences, I think we can just combine them and say the work group recommends that the CTC explores ways to make the TPA free to candidates, affordable.
I'm a
I
little
want
worried
to
about
see
the word
affordable, yeah, free to candidates, and just,
I think that's fine.
I
You
would,
like affordable?
I think for affordable or free, because again,
somebody could say $300 is affordable.
it's true.
yeah, that's
Lots
open
of
to
people say,
interpretation, but
Is
is free really practical? And is that really a fair thing to do? Honestly, people have to pay for licensure exams in other industries.
That's true.
So I'm just,
Mm-hmm.
trying to be reasonable. There is a cost associated with it.
About like teaching
Financially accessible?
or financially
Financially
accessible.
accessible.
I
That
like
one's
that
good.
term, yeah.
Yeah,
I like that.
financially accessible is good.
I feel like that also opens up contextual situations.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Right,
Because
yeah.
It totally does.
I put on a sliding scale, like, oh, this person's making this much money, so we can charge them more.
Exactly.
And that's actually a great idea now that we're talking about it. Maybe that's the way we go, because a lot of industries do that. If you make a certain amount, and when you're a beginning teacher, you don't make that much money, but you get to 20 years in, and so across units and extra degrees and credentials, you are at the high end.
So then this opens it up for like, maybe that's one possibility, right? So this opens it up for people to
So financially
I
accessible.
like that.
Yeah. with
And
the
should we
idea of a
say,
sliding scale.
Good, I don't. Or financially accessible, like, I don't know, maybe there's an argument that like, well, people are paying, so,
Well,
I
yeah,
also-
there's that.
right, so it must be financially accessible.
Yeah,
Right, well,
it's,
people
well,
are
of course you
choosing
have to
it.
mandate it. I mean, well, it's mandatory, so I guess,
Yeah.
they find a way,
They
right?
find a way.
They
And that's
find
in
a
a
way.
lot of the comments. There was really hard for them to find the money to pay for it, or they took more loans out, which is,
Right.
we all know, not good
Yeah.
either.
Right, and if they're doing
for
student teaching or going through credentialing, they don't have time to take on extra jobs to pay for the test or,
Where's is that, did we put that in there, more financially acceptable? Or did we agree about that?
I would just say to make it financially accessible.
Okay.
Or free?
Can we
Yeah.
eliminate holds a desire
Yeah.
and just say recommends
Yeah.
making the TPA?
I agree with that. The holds a desire.
Okay, I like that.
Okay.
And then can we flip flop free and financially accessible? So free comes first.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yes, that's
That
my
works. Sort of push-
semantics.
yeah,
Yeah,
Can I
push
strike the top one to
Yeah.
show that
Yeah.
we
Oh,
are
yeah.
we're
Mhm.
writing
Right.
it down here?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Or wait, if you want to say recommends the TPA be free or financially accessible.
And then how should I revise the second sentence for you? Just take out the second sentence, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can take it out because that's,
Now we're redundant.
Mhm.
yeah, that looks fine.
Well, it's short and sweet too.
Yeah.
Mhm. We did good.
Yeah, good enough.
Hey.
Look at that go.
One down.
One down.
That makes it for yesterday.
Yeah, I told my group, I was like, good luck with this. I'm sure you'll move the work forward.
The
Local
first
scoring?
one, no.
The local scoring.
Yeah,
Local
local
scoring.
scoring.
That's a big conversation.
Yeah.
The one before too, there was one we didn't get to.
Yeah.
The first.
Um, Yes,
So
CTC supports, right? Something
we
like
did not
that.
get to that at all.
Oh, it was the, program. Supports.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, well, one down. Next one.
Let's see, this one,
Okay, this one does talk about local scoring. It
oh,
seems like
Vanessa made a comment on here. Would you like to strike her comment?
Just check, check box.
Let's see, what does it say?
Well, that's what I was saying about program sponsors. Like if
Yeah.
we're paying for a valid and reliable assessment, should the program sponsors not cover the cost to make sure that the assessment is valid and reliable? Is that not why we're paying them?
They should be doing it. That's part of their work in designing and implementing, right?
That's
Right?
my point, is like, we're paying you to sponsor this assessment. You should also be responsible for making sure that everyone's using your assessment appropriately and making sure that it's valid and reliable within local scoring settings and.
Is that how it usually, I mean, I know that like, if people are scoring at TPA, for example, they get paid
Mhm.
by,
At TPA or is it by, yeah,
and they get, I think they get paid for training and then they
Yeah,
get paid hourly
yes.
to actually score the exams.
Yes.
So I don't see why that would be any different.
But it's only $19 an hour. You don't get paid a lot
that's
to
true.
do that
Yeah.
process. I think that was what we talked about yesterday, was
but then
that
even
scoring
better
piece.
that, I mean, I know it's minimal, but even better that if it is local scoring, then our university supervisors or our mentors are getting those $19 instead of an auxiliary person from.
And that's
ES
kind of
or
what I
whatever.
mentioned that before too, based on what we were, because the question was, what is local scoring? How would you define it? Like,
Mhm.
we couldn't really define
Right,
it. Like,
that's why
what does it
that's
look
a
like?
group. We all have
know?
different ideas.
I think it should be a combination of different, like, people within, like, if you're the teacher, I actually feel the teacher candidate should be part of that discussion. And I was even thinking big picture, like, why not have like a committee? This is my TPA committee, and I'm going to present to you my document and what I chose and why I chose it. And you get to ask questions about, why did you do it this way? Could you have done it a different way and have more of a discussion about the TPA instead of just doing this big old paper,
Like
turning it in?
pieces.
Yeah. That's a lot of work, but it's also in real time and it's something that I feel they can learn from. You as a professor gets to know me, my master teacher gets to know me, like, no, I saw this in class, you did do that. And my, I don't know, support provider, whoever, gets to give their perspective. I've seen you do this, I've seen you do that, we've talked about this.
But I think if we move to local scoring, then those institutions have the option to be able
Yes.
to do that, right? If we're open
That's,
enough
again,
to
that's
allow
me and
that.
my
Yeah.
high thoughts, but that's,
But
I don't
how
know if
can
that's how
we
people would do
work
that.
this to make sure that institutions can get to that point, right?
But do they need to get to that point? I mean, if you're saying, is what I'm asking, do we really need to get to that point? Because again,
Needs to be-
exactly, because if it's formative, there are going to be those iterations of feedback that you're talking about through the process. So it doesn't necessarily have to live at the very, very end, is what I'm thinking.
And that would be
If we-
more of a summative at the end.
Correct,
Yeah.
So-
right, and
And
yeah.
we're talking about funding. I'm just talking about ideas, sorry.
But
Relevant.
I've engaged in a process like that before, where a candidate, they did the assessment. And then separate from submission of the assessment, they did something like an exhibition where they had a panel and then they presented, these are the pieces. But it wasn't just from the TPA, it was sort of almost like a portfolio defense of like their work through the year, and the TPA was a part of that. It is cool, it is
That's
very
how I
time
did my
consuming.
credential program,
Uh-huh.
and then it was a portfolio, I presented it
Right.
to my, college, and then I took that portfolio and used that same thing in my interview process,
Yes,
and it was
yeah.
like
Yeah.
a preparation for,
Right.
and then highlighted why you should hire me, and,
Right.
all of those things. But we can't get to that anymore because a TPA trumps all of that and takes over all of that time. So now there aren't any opportunities for us to be able to do
Well,
different things like that, I guess.
the way that we implement the secondary passing standard is
Oh, interesting.
very much
Yeah.
what you're talking about. That's
Yeah.
exactly how we do it. The candidate, their supervisor, and their mentor teacher at the school site. We look at where the score said that, okay, you didn't do this right or whatever. And we go through and look at the candidate's body of work, and it's a process that, by discussing and talking about it, so it looks similar to that.
Mhm.
And then, of course, because that's the alternative to say, okay, well, you didn't make it here, but here's where you do this. Where it shows up in this work.
Mhm.
It's intense,
I bet.
honestly, and not everybody makes it either.
Right.
They don't always get that secondary passing standard.
I wonder for the sake of sort of finances, this is not my depth of knowledge, does not lie here. But I do wonder about, so when institutions do locally score, because it has happened in the past, I've been a scorer, but it was a part of my job. Do the programs, is there any funding that comes to the institution when assessments are locally scored?
I don't think so, and I'm going way back to like PACT, right?
That's my experience too.
So,
Yeah.
with the PACT, a lot of the stuff was happening anyway. Remember
Yeah.
how the supervisor, the
That's
faculty member was going over the submittal
Yeah.
before it was
Yeah.
submitted.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
definitely, and it was locally scored.
And there was no funding?
There was no funding as far as I know. I don't remember
Okay.
anything like that. I
Mhm.
don't remember any. I don't
So we
remember
just
that.
assumed that cost, the sort of human
Well,
cost.
yeah, it was part of your teaching. I mean, it was
Yes.
part of the teaching load, right?
Yeah.
A part of the faculty members
Mm-hmm,
thing.
mm-hmm.
And then it went to Ed TPA, and then
And
that
that-
cost went to, well,
Yes.
there was a cost now, and
Right.
but it was someone else doing it. But when you
Yeah.
guys had those programs, how many did you have in those programs as candidates versus what you have now?
More,
Yeah, double,
more.
triple?
I don't know.
You have more now or you have more then?
We had more then.
Oh, you had more
I
than,
know we
okay.
had more then.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember the numbers, but
Kathy, do you know why it switched? Like, what was the motivation to move away from the design that was in PACT?
to go to Ed TPA,
Yeah.
I don't remember the total rationale behind that. Honestly, I don't. I mean, this is more or less before my time, but
But it's very similar. The
Right.
assessment itself is very
Yeah.
similar
but
in the,
I
P-
think-
yeah.
I don't know why people decided that the Ed TPA was, I don't know, it could have been marketing, could have been just, who knows, money. You know,
Maybe the sort of
It always comes down to that,
infrastructure
you know,
to be able to
money.
handle the,
But see, I don't think so because
No.
by and large, I don't think that the programs were complaining about the pact. I don't remember there being,
From
I mean,
what
I don't remember.
What Mary was saying early in one of the earlier meetings was to create a baseline
Right.
of teacher experience and knowledge and depth of knowledge from what I remember her explaining because so many programs varied in their
Yeah.
implementation
I
of
see.
credential programming. So implementing the TPA was a way to create that.
Create a level field.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I
that would
remember
make
her
sense.
saying at the beginning or one of the earlier
It
meetings.
was more in line with the apps, with the actual goal of creating a TPA. Because again, if it's local scoring, I mean, like pure local scoring, right? How do you assess whether or not one program is doing what it should be doing,
uh-huh.
Mhm.
right? Or how do you,
Right.
it's equitable across everywhere? But I don't know.
Can we get back to this?
May
Yeah,
I
we're sorry.
change this word through funding to with funding from the state?
Maybe, and with funding from the state and program sponsors
Or guidance too,
Yeah.
right?
like
Like
guidance. Oh, with guidance from the state and funding from program side and sponsors.
And
I think why this conversation is relevant is like to understand where is the exchange of money, right? And
Mhm.
I'm not sure I understand, but if we're asking for programs to have their faculty members or somebody do some additional work, and in our current iteration, they're being paid by Pearson if they do the work, not for their own, but for whoever. Then the question is now, where does that funding come from? Even if it's like, yesterday, someone said that they, it is a part of their faculty members' work to score. But they give them units. So they say, oh, 2 candidates, if you score, I think that's what they said, if you score 2.
What?
No, wait.
it's different, there's two different things. It was
No.
for the professor, 2 candidates is 1 unit.
For supervise, they
Yes, for
supervise and they
supervising.
score packed.
Yes.
So they supervise 2 candidates and they score their packs, I believe is what.
That's what yeah.
And they get a unit's worth of equivalency of teaching. But that's still financial, right?
Mhm,
I mean, to give
mhm.
someone a unit.
Yeah.
Of teaching means that they have to, potentially pay someone else to do whatever unit that they would have taught. So I don't know like where the funding should come from. I'm not. So maybe the program sponsors, but then I don't want them to raise the prices of the exam to pay for, I'm not sure.
Well, if the exam is $300, and again, I'm just picking a number, $200, okay, make it easy, $200. $100 goes towards the testing, and then the other 100 can go towards whoever, I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know what I don't know what the actual cost
Or,
is.
or
I'm not
what the
sure.
breakdown is, right? Like, okay, I pay this fee.
And or program sponsors?
Sure.
Yeah,
Or just
I
and.
feel like once we say funding from the state, it's going to then be a caveat of, I don't know, prevent us from moving forward because we don't have funding.
So what
Right,
happens
and
when
like-
the state budget comes out, they're like, we don't have
Mhm.
funding for that. But
Right.
then this dies? I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, that's
Um,
my only
Mhm.
How does that look?
challenge.
Again, recommend additional costs related to reliability of the collaboration score. And provided.
I mean, that does put a lot of responsibility on program sponsors now. That's,
Maybe just with guidance, maybe we take out funding, but again, it goes back to the big question, who's getting that money? If it's being locally scored, and there was a fee before for the test, who gets that? Is there money out there, or is that fee just gone down? Because here we're saying, have the TPA be embedded in the program, so you as a university would take on that cost. But before there was a cost, so what happens to that money? It just goes away? So is there a need for grants and loans if that cost doesn't exist anymore to take the TPA? These are all questions above my pay grade. It's all interconnected. If you change one, the others shift.
So, because this is specific to additional costs related to inter-rater reliability, validity, collaboration, scoring resubmissions, and calibration training.
I think this is, I mean, program sponsors would be like Pearson for EdTPA, right?
Well, I think Pearson does both of them.
Oh, yeah.
Don't they?
Yeah, I was
Do all
just,
of them? Pearson just has all the money?
Pearson, I was trying to,
Or is it educational?
Is it the same for Cal TPA?
not
it?
sure.
I don't know.
My experience is only with EdTPA.
Okay, too.
I think Cal TPA is CTP.
CTC.
Yeah. But the idea too, and I remember in a previous conversation, the fact that that calibration and stuff through Pearson, it's all on them. That's why they charge a fee for their test. And it's kind of like separate. So then the universe or whoever the program sponsor doesn't have to worry about that because it's already, or the university, school, county office doesn't have to worry about that because Pearson's taking care of it. The third party.
Which is why I think if we're accruing costs for inter-rater reliability, validity, collaboration, and scoring and calibration, then the program sponsors should be responsible for the assessment that that institution is using to be able to have valid, reliable, collaborative scoring.
But do they absorb that cost in general, or do we still charge that fee?
I think it should be, but I'm like, charge everyone, like, don't charge the state, charge the third party person because they're just making money off of us. And I'm like, how do we, I don't
Well,
know.
it's a system, right? I think this
Yeah.
is what's tricky, I'm
Yeah.
trying to wrap my mind around, is part of what we're saying is we don't want candidates to pay.
Mhm,
So who's paying the program assessors
mhm.
to do the work that they do? I don't know
Right,
where that
yeah,
funding
that's
comes from.
true,
But we're
too.
saying, don't make the students pay, don't make the universities pay.
Mhm,
The work has to get done.
mhm.
So I'm just trying to figure out,
Something,
there has to be
yeah.
some
There's something
system.
missing.
Yeah.
And I'm just like ignorant of this. I don't know if
Yeah.
the state pays, I don't know who pays, but like my hope is that we come up with a system somehow, a funding stream where it's not on the back of the resident or the student, or it's extremely affordable for them, and that it's not also absorbed into the operational costs of the institution, for additional work. That's my hope. I don't have a framework for how that happens yet. So I don't know.
Rebecca, can you click on the link that says score verification? Sorry, if you go back to that. Is that me?
I was trying to see who you make your check out to, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Can you go to the tab that says Cal TPA?
Oh.
See, like, if we're saying store
Maybe that's what it's done.
verification fees per cycle, who pays for that?
Well, now it's the candidate, right?
Now the
Candidate
candidate is
pays for it.
paying for additional score verification? I don't understand.
Well, I think that's if they're challenging
Oh, okay.
their score. It's not available if you pass the cycle, so it must be,
It's if
I
you-
didn't pass. I want someone else to rescore this. Because I think I should have passed.
Right.
No, that's not good.
Well, I think maybe with this recommendation, like the essence behind this is that we don't want programs or candidates to assume additional costs that may come with
Mhm,
local scoring.
mhm,
I think that's what we're
mhm.
sort of underneath all of this. So regardless of who it is, it shouldn't be those those groups.
Well, do
You
we
wanna add that?
qualify why, I mean, if they're not passing because they don't cut it, there has to be some level, right?
Of like,
Well, if they're not passing, I guess. I mean, when people don't pass the bar exam, they gotta pay again, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, if they're not passing because of, I guess what is the reason they're not passing
Mhm.
is what I would be concerned about in terms of saying, okay, well, if you don't pass, you just keep to get to retake it and retake it for free, which is, I think, unrealistic and not reasonable.
Which we saw happen with the waivers that came up during the pandemic.
Oh,
People were-
yeah,
like you said, like
that's true.
people kept turning in
Kept
stuff.
turning-
that was
that's true.
incomplete
Yep,
because they didn't have to
that's
pay,
true. That's
right?
right. That's
Or
true.
people were signing up and not
Not
actually.
actually
Yeah.
taking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true too.
So we do want to avoid that.
Yeah, there has to be some type of a
Um,
guardrail.
I think our work with condition codes really got at the concern about increasing cost for retaking when it wasn't necessary. So to Kathy's point, it wasn't that they weren't passing because they weren't actually competent at the skills, but they weren't passing because of technical issues. So the changes we've made with condition codes, I think addresses that. And then I think we can be confident or hopefully that if a candidate doesn't pass, it's because they are not showing competence in the TPEs and they need to retake it and demonstrate competence. And so they would need to pay for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you feel like we've addressed it that in the condition codes?
Say, Rebecca, thank you.
But I think that when we talked about this, part of it was maybe I didn't spend as much time to finalize, it's not a condition code question, I didn't actually spend enough time on this assessment to make it the quality that it should be. And so I turned this in and maybe, my text was sparse or, whatever.
Right, and then you should be paying for it again, but I also
Yeah,
think
uh-huh.
to mitigate that issue
Mhm.
is where the recommendation that says faculty members should and can,
Mhm.
in the realm of appropriate supports,
Yeah.
look at your submission before
Yeah.
you turn that in.
Yeah.
And make sure that it's,
Mhm.
okay, I mean, I'm not saying give them the answers by any
Right.
means, but you can tell if something is like, okay, well, maybe you could have gone a little deeper here.
Mhm.
Those types of things. And then we're getting at what we mean when we say formative,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So in regards to this recommendation, I'm also thinking, do we have the responsibility to say who's paying for these things? Like, is this now just like out of our pay grade and we can just say, look, the commission?
Yeah, I would think this is I think you're right, Vanessa. I think this is something we recommend and then it's up to the commission or whoever
Yeah.
to work out those details.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
and
Yeah.
quite frankly, with additional funding, it's gonna end up that way anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we don't have that
Yeah.
pay grade or depth of knowledge in terms of figuring out where those monies can
Mhm.
come from.
Mhm.
Because I'm sure, if there's, grants that are developed or that can be developed, I mean, you think about grants that are tied to various, Senate bills and this, that, and the other thing. And not to mention in this crazy environment that we're in now where funding is drying up, that
Mhm.
was coming
Mhm.
and now is not,
Yeah.
So,
Anonymous Unicorn is typing on this, which I think is Jason, because it says, Jason says if you want to make this work, you need to fund it.
No, that was there before though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is that you typing, Rebecca or Al?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
She's a
You're a
unicorn.
unicorn today.
I like it.
Yes, I agree. It shouldn't fall onto the candidate. And
I don't know.
it's out of our pay grade to make these decisions on where budgeting
Mhm.
comes from.
but again, I just want to make sure
But I
that
also-
we
yeah.
understand that again, if,
Mhm.
the candidate does bear some responsibility in terms of, and, the program, but I do think.
But this
for other
recommendation is related to reliability,
Validity,
validity, and-
collaboration,
right?
scoring.
Yeah, it doesn't have to do with what their resubmissions or anything like
Okay.
that.
Oh,
So
okay.
just
Yeah.
knowing that cost will be accrued, we just don't want it to be fall
us,
to the
on the
candidate.
candidates.
Well, not all of it. I guess some of it, but not all of it, right? Like if there is going to be a cost, I don't know.
Well, if
But
it's
the
locally
previous
scored,
recommendation said it
No.
was gonna be what is it?
financially accessible.
Financially accessible.
Okay, maybe we just put that word.
Yeah.
So
I
Well, but well,
For that
okay.
last sentence, is it program sponsors? Or is that the correct term for the assessors, program?
Testing services, yeah, like,
They're called program
The program
sponsors?
sponsor
Okay,
of
okay.
the assessment, like
Okay.
the Ed TPA, Cal TPA, and FAST
Okay.
would be program
Program
sponsors.
sponsors,
Yeah.
okay.
You want to put assessment program sponsors? You want to clarify that?
yeah, I think we should put assessment in front of that. Yeah.
Is there, do we want to say or other, I don't know where other forms of support or financial support should come from, but does it make sense to say provide funding and guidance from the state, assessment program sponsors or other, I don't know.
Or
effect-
maybe something connected to the statewide thing that we have in another recommendation, where it's like the statewide convening or something. Maybe,
Mm,
never mind. I don't know.
I do like,
It should be a conversation that is had at that convening.
right, I do like the state or I would say state and assessment program sponsors. I don't know if I would slash the or because I do think it would be,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess I'm just,
Let's work together.
yeah, because they should work together on that, I would think. And I think that kind of is in line with the other recommendations, like you're saying, Vanessa, that talk about that.
And to the point around should not fall to the candidate, I wonder if we should say and deeply consider accessibility, financial accessibility or affordability of the candidate, or something like that sort of aligns with the last one. Given that maybe there is some cost.
Financially accessible to the candidate.
Mhm.
I like what you said about like deeply consider impact on the candidates.
Yeah, I like that too, actually.
And our desire to make the assessment financially accessible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
I wonder if this is also this afternoon
Mhm.
is gonna be a place where we can double down on that in the rationale, right?
Mhm.
When we write the rationales for these,
Mhm.
Oh,
That makes
that
sense.
will be a place where you can bring that back again.
yeah, because that rationale of, that's what the additional funding is all about, making sure that a lot of this stuff does not negatively impact the candidate.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to the sliding scale because I know like when I first started teaching, I could not afford stuff like CSAT, so much. Oh, CBAS, CSAT, 2 kids, husband, like you have so much going on. School, teaching for free.
You pay to get your credential, you pay to renew like you pay for every piece of
But
this.
now where I'm at in my life, I'm like, oh, $300. Let me donate 300 to someone in need.
Mhm.
So I think it's gonna be, there's gonna be those candidates that can't afford it and be like, nope, I have my money for my parents. They
Mhm.
saved this money for me. I can afford it. And you're gonna have those people like me when I was young and trying to do it all and keep a job and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember a timeline from Juliet? How are we doing on? No? Okay.
About an hour, and we started this at what,
9:05.
9:05, so we're at 9:45 almost.
Okay.
Did we, wait,
15 minutes left.
I thought we were doing good, but we're not.
No, we're 2 down.
Think 12. No.
Oh, no, I mean, we might.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, we have the scoring, so let's go to the scoring one.
Yeah.
I thought we just had those two. I'm like,
Oh, I like
did
that last one
today.
Good job, guys.
Okay, are we on slide 20 now?
21. Yeah.
21. Can anybody explain Colin's comment for me?
He's talking about ethnic studies. As this is to be a new mandated curriculum. Well, at least ethnic studies, at least in I know in San Francisco is rolling out in all classrooms next year, school year.
Which brings me back to my point of adapting the LTPA as the statewide assessment because it's directly reflective of what we're doing in the state.
Right, yeah.
You know, because, well, this reminds me of the recommendation we wrote yesterday about the UDL stuff, right? And the cultural responsive teaching.
You want to add that in there? We can do a third bullet.
Let me
Rebecca,
see.
did you get your question answered?
Sorry, what's your question?
I am not sure. There's a new mandated, as this is to be a new mandated curriculum, TPAs will need updating. Does he just mean like
Studies,
as there is new curriculum?
yeah, with the ethnic studies,
Okay.
because
Which I think Kathy kind of gets to what you were saying is that updating, like updates are happening, right? Like it's already in process to update the assessments.
and then in light of what, you know, the steps after these recommendations, you know, we know that the process is going to include updating standards and so on and so forth based upon these recommendations.
Got it. Who Jason said, would asset-based rubric support this, which could help consolidate from other recommendations related to asset-based? I think yes, like focus on or assessor training, focus on prioritization.
Should there be something about it, developing an asset-based rubric?
Maybe that's in a different,
Probably be when they do the designing, right?
yeah.
I also just want to point out Tori's comments at the end. I think this is like her direct area of.
Where are they?
That was actually
Scroll
my
down.
question is
Should
where,
scroll down more on the right side for the comments. There you go.
I don't see her. Oh,
Tori.
Tori is Victoria. Got it.
question was like, what problem is this solving for or getting at? Because I don't know all of the rubrics for every assessment, but they seem to be focused on what candidates are doing. Maybe the thing that's not in there, the assessments will have to be revised if and when ethnic studies becomes there's that piece of it that like as TPEs change and those kind of mandates change, of course, the assessment will have to change and thus the training. But I'm not sure. Is there a sort of underlying issue or problem here that this is helping us with?
Well, I would just say that for the design of the LPA, the second cycle of the Cal TPA,
Yeah.
we really tried to put in the rubrics to a much more asset-based language
Okay.
and way of the assessing candidates. Of course, we didn't really touch cycle 1 too much, but you know, I do feel like, again, when Juliet was talking about the steps that come later, these things that we recommend are going to go into whatever designing and standards and all that kind of good stuff. So I guess, to your question, what is this actually solving? I think this might be, I feel like we're already trying to do that.
Yeah, I think this is feedback related directly to the Ed TPA. Because I think I remember somebody saying around the feedback that candidates get is this computer thing that says blah blah blah, look at codes, blah 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 blah, and they're like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I see.
And so I think this was an attempt to make sure that the TPA assessors provide rubric specific feedback and not just look at page 2.
I
or something
see,
like
I
that.
see. This is like, let's make sure the feedback the candidate gets, because it's formative,
Yeah.
is
Trying to make
both
more-
what they're able to do as well as areas of growth, but not just where they went wrong.
And
Yes.
also
What are the
action.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I
And
also
really formative and actionable, meaning that the candidate understands what they can and need to change or what they should do.
Mhm.
So I
Okay.
almost feel like the first
Okay.
paragraph kind of confuses us a little bit, and the second one kind of gives more of what we're trying to get.
Okay, let's see.
Want to switch them?
Oh, rubric specific, yeah, you know what, you're right, Vanessa. Yeah, you could just take that second paragraph.
Yeah, and maybe
Honestly.
the first one and remove the
Yeah,
culturally
right.
responsive and all of
Yeah.
that stuff,
Yeah.
because what we're trying to get at, like you're saying, Shayna, is
Mhm.
Yep,
formative feedback, individualized, that can
Mhm.
actually be actionable.
yeah, I think we could just, yeah, you're right, I think those two bullets kind of confuse the point.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add in, because then we take out the asset based, and I'm sure that that is matters deeply, and it's in Jason's comment. So could we just add it right here? Provide asset-based rubric specific feedback?
Yes,
Rubric specific.
Actionable. I wanna
asset-based,
add the word
actionable,
also, yeah,
yeah.
and actionable, rubric specific.
What do we think?
I think that works.
Next.
Oh.
Oh, no, never mind.
Sorry. That second sentence, I wonder if we can just add the word individualized in the first sentence. Like, do we need a whole second sentence there?
Mm.
And then the other thing I wonder is in that top section that we crossed out, two of the areas that were highlighted were culturally responsive teaching and ethnic studies. And I think that there was some maybe attempt to make sure that the assessors were knowledgeable enough in those areas to be able to provide feedback on them. So I wonder if something here that we say,
And I know, well, in the changes
Say
to
what?
the exam is where we address the culture responsive teaching.
Yes,
But
that's
that-
what I was gonna say.
That's only to the exam. What I'm hearing you say,
what you
Shayna,
read.
is that the readers have to be
Feedback, yeah.
knowledgeable enough to know.
The
what's-
assessors.
I think that's what
Yeah.
so I wonder if we can say here, it's just something, a sentence like, and
That's what I'm saying. If you go to slide 10,
okay.
I believe that's something that we were alluding to, but maybe we can say in addition to just the TPAs, or we can say that assessors are I don't know, trained
think
in
that-
this way or something like that.
I think that was the thing, is just making sure that folks have the necessary training to provide
Right.
feedback in these areas.
And if the group is recommended that the TPAs be centered around culturally responsive, sustaining equity focused pedagogy,
Yeah.
then the trainers will have to also be
Mhm.
knowledgeable of that, right?
Mhm.
Right,
Mhm.
I agree with Shayna though, because that's not, that's an assumption and that's a
Mhm.
positive assumption.
Right.
And
I
that-
remember that conversation. That was what we were talking about, was that the assessors wouldn't necessarily have the eyes to be able to see and interpret what was happening, So yeah.
I think that we should, even though it is addressed with the candidates on slide 10, I think that we should explicitly call that out on
for
slide
assessor training,
22 for
assessor training.
assessor training, because yeah.
I wonder if we just flip-flop, like if we took the first chunk and made it second and say like, in order to do this, well, the RDA TPA work group recommends that assessor training bullet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, move paragraph 1 down below.
Yeah, just flip-flop them. Uh-huh.
I would highlight assessor training. I would bold it. That controls team. Highlight that, yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is now talking about the
And-
readers. The readers have to have the knowledge to be able to know what they're looking at.
Can I say, just add the word includes, recommends that assessor training includes.
Mhm. I like it.
Mhm.
And then maybe the transitional, like, in order to do this well, or therefore, just to make sure it follows, like,
Mhm. So that not the next people aren't doing the same questioning.
yeah, because, yeah, it was hard to figure out the connection.
very good at just minding your words there.
Killing me.
Yeah. I'm like glancing over at you, like I would be sitting on my hands.
All my thoughts.
Yeah, okay. So there you go.
Shayna, tell me what to write. In order to
In order to, I don't provide such feedback, comma, the RDA TPA work group. Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay,
That works.
okay.
My brain was blank, so.
And whoever gets it next
Don't
can
forget
wordsmith it
comma.
more.
Yeah.
Don't forget the comma.
Uh-oh.
Very important.
Uh-oh.
where? Oh, yep, where I am. Okay.
Yes. Training to be an ELA teacher.
Oh, it looks like 24 is the same as 22 as 20. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, maybe people were combining.
They were.
They were,
Mhm.
yeah.
So we can probably take that one.
Write that out.
And I was going to recommend separating the last
Oh,
one. And it was because someone had combined. But now I think where we landed is good. But it does seem like two things. Like we want asset-based, rubric-specific feedback that can be actionable. We also want our assessors to be well-versed and
So-
competent
we could split.
in,
And we could specify, we could say in order to provide actionable rubric specific, blah, 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 we could separate
I
it.
feel like we addressed that in the other one.
We addressed it in the other one. I think,
Okay.
I think we're good.
Yeah, I agree.
okay, next.
So then we strike that one. Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay.
And
And I
then,
think that this, sorry, are we on to 25?
yeah,
I think that this kind of has been covered
It
through
has.
the, what you call it? Interim actions with the condition codes
Yes.
and the technical condition codes.
yes.
But do we keep it in? Wasn't Adam saying we should probably still, if it's relevant to initial, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, he did say that. He
Interim.
said that maybe, but I don't know. But I also feel like when we talk about, and then, didn't in the other one, did we say resubmittals? Well, no, we didn't say resubmittals specifically.
Yeah, I don't see anything in this recommendation that hasn't already been addressed by.
Yeah,
the
I
interim.
don't either, but
Mhm.
I think it's duplicative.
Yeah.
But is it? Well, okay. So we're reducing the technical condition codes.
Mhm.
The candidates resubmit within a week. But there are still condition codes.
Yeah, but I think they're given a voucher now. Do they say
Right.
at the
Says
beginning?
Oh, they're given-
technical
Right.
condition codes.
Technical condition codes,
And I think technical condition codes have been
as
addressed.
in the interim things, yeah.
Yeah.
Include beyond the 2C or whatever. Remember
Mhm.
2A.
2A? Yeah, it's beyond that though, right? The vouchers, like what if my condition code is a 4B? I don't know, whatever that is. I'm just making something up.
If it's
Do I still
not
get this?
related to technicalities,
yeah.
if it's based on your assessment, then that's different.
Yeah, if it's
If it's
competency
like,
based,
right, yeah,
Yeah.
if it's like you clicked the wrong window
Right.
and now you have to wait a month to resubmit
Right.
and pay the extra fee, but if it's like multiple subject to single subject, though that's like a technicality that you don't have to go through the process again, that's been covered in interim actions, but if it's part of the assessment, you can still get condition codes and all
So
that
what
stuff,
about
right?
condition codes that are not the what is it, 2A?
Mhm.
What about a technical condition code that isn't 2A? Do we care about those? I guess is the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Like what if I don't know the condition codes well. I upload a file that's supposed to be my video, it's not my video.
Mhm.
So it's not the wrong content area that I'm submitting to, but there are these other condition codes that could be technical so I'm just wondering if this is
That's what I think the vouchers address. That's what she
the
was saying.
vouchers that I
Yes.
would still get a voucher.
Yeah, it's like if I chose the wrong area, and again, I don't know the test, so I just wrong
Mhm.
area, and I oh crap, I did the wrong area, and then you can get a voucher to submit to the correct area,
Right, but that's just the two. What I
and
heard
that's more of a
yesterday,
technical, right?
What I heard yesterday was it only applies there's no fee associated with, or you get a voucher for resubmitting if it was just that one condition code.
It's a
Because
few
that was the
condition
most
codes, yeah.
No, there was two different. It was condition code,
Okay.
and then the second one was,
Is it content, something, it was in, they mentioned this
The
morning.
content was the 2. It was the 2A.
Oh, yeah.
That was the one.
Oh,
Submit
yeah.
to the wrong content, and that was really, really common,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, one of them was really common, and that's the one, like, they said 50% of the codes were that code,
Yeah.
and that's the one they give a voucher for.
Yeah.
So they, right off the bat, they got
That's
rid of
right.
a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Because that was the one that was most common.
Right.
And again, I'm not familiar with condition codes either, but
But
I know it's being addressed.
I do remember though, what you're saying, I do remember them saying that this would only be for that one particular condition code for that, and that other ones would not be addressed by this. And then there's a conversation about, if it is competency
Competency-based.
based
Uh-huh.
condition codes, I mean, do you want to give vouchers out to resubmit on things that are like that?
Yeah, I don't know.
And the other thing that this recommendation, if I remember the conversation over time, addresses is the timeliness.
Right.
Yeah.
Of
Right.
the, what I think was desired by the group was, we want people to know early so they have enough time to resubmit within that scoring window.
Right.
Whereas now you get it back and you have to wait another month.
Right.
Like that. So I think I would just be hesitant to strike it out if we still want to keep that element of time.
Do you want to
I
just
would
like
say-
question in there, like, is this addressed? We can in the meeting, is
Maybe
this
so, that's
addressed?
Yeah, maybe put a question mark and, I like you italicize technical condition code, maybe in parentheses somewhere say, all technical
Mhm.
Yeah,
condition
or
codes.
maybe not even technical, just a condition code. Because I think what you're saying is, regardless of its technical or content based, I should still have timely or enough time to resubmit in that same submission window without having to wait for the next submission window if I've submitted for this
Right.
one,
Mhm.
Yeah,
But then you talk about the cost, because we're
Yeah.
saying that if it's a technical issue, it should be free. But if it's a competency-based issue,
then
then
you
not,
should replay.
right.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
In one of our first meetings, they gave us a list of condition codes.
yeah, they did.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think maybe asking the question and just leaving it be is fine, because I mean, I just don't have a sense of
Yeah,
what all is covered.
right, because you're right. It
And the
might
cost
not,
of that,
and
like-
the interim one might just be just that one specific one.
I think it may have been.
Mhm.
And then I don't know what goes into, like, in order to notify a candidate of a particular kind of condition code, maybe somebody has to open the thing, like, I don't know the time it takes from submission to assigning to score. And so I don't know what it means to say a week or a day or a month or.
Would that be in the feasibility document over here? I wonder. Where's this thing? What's it saying? It's just the area that recommends candidates be notified within a week. This is it.
And that was another question I had in the comment. I was like, why a week? Why not 3 days? Why not, like, I don't know why we came up with the week, but.
Well, even. We should still get their results prior to the next submission window so that if it is content based, they have an opportunity to submit for that next submission window, right? So could we move the language to say?
When you
Not,
say content based, you mean like,
Competency.
but then they would just fail, right?
yeah. Right, but I'm
So-
saying if you fail, then you should know before the next window opens or the next submission window opens so that when you can revise and resubmit.
So now
But
we're.
No,
That's different.
But
That's
that's different than
different.
the condition code though, right?
Mhm.
But I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, that idea is.
Isn't it right? Isn't that different than a
Oh.
condition code,
Mhm.
It
right?
is different than a condition code, right? Okay.
But that's a good idea, though. I like that idea.
Mhm.
I do
I-
like that idea.
I feel like that's the timeliness that I'm thinking about, regardless of of any condition code or content
Right,
or
the
whatever,
content.
I should be able to have my feedback prior to the next submission window.
Right.
So I can adjust it, change it quickly, and then submit for the
Right.
next one.
Yeah, instead
Yeah,
of
the
waiting all the
timeliness
time.
is one thing, and then the condition
Even if we
code
have
is
to
another.
pay,
Yes.
right, yeah.
Mhm. And here they're together,
So
but I think
got
they're
it together.
Mhm.
Because I do think this has been semi-addressed with the interim action, but again, what you're saying is, yeah, it should be, you're right. Like if I'm a candidate and I know I need to get cleared because I have a job in fall and they said, if you don't get it, you don't have a job and I need it for my family and you should have that
And I don't get my
opportunity.
results till July 1, but all I needed to do was change, some language in
Yeah.
my whatever, and now my whole job is on hold because I didn't know this prior to the next.
And I hate to
submission.
say
For sure.
this, but is there an option when you submit, say, I don't know what the window is, January to
Well,
April?
there are multiple.
Can I
submissions.
submit early? Okay, in
Mhm.
January, say I need feedback by March. Yeah,
Mhm.
feedback, no, doesn't happen that way. Okay.
No, you turn it in by that date, the date, and
Uh-huh.
then there's a day where the scores are released.
Okay.
Yeah, which I mean, I think logistically, there's probably a reason for that. I don't know if they can have rolling submission
And
and.
maybe that's what we're
things
asking for. Maybe that's what we do, because there are people who rely on this test score for their jobs.
Right,
So now
so I
we're
think
interfering.
the comment would be then turn it in on the earlier submission date. But like for
Yes.
us, we have our candidates turn in March with the understanding that they may need to resubmit.
Okay.
So there's 2 more submission
I
dates,
see, okay.
So I think that would be the answer probably
Mhm.
within our.
But it sounds like it's
process.
already there. So like I said,
May-
I was just
Maybe, not the weapon advertising for, not the like,
the
you
week.
turn this in and you give me feedback when I want it. Like I turn it in when I want it and you give me feedback when I need it.
Mhm.
It's not individualized like that.
I have some questions about these when we combine our recommendations so that we can be brief. I have concerns that they're not as clear. So, like this one goes into what we were talking about before with preparing scorers. It talks about revising standard 5. Okay. I'm just raising that as there's a whole bunch that were combined into one, and I want to make sure we're not losing anything while you're doing that. Maybe we're not. I just like saw all the strike through and thought like, are we not being clear enough now that we tried to smush everything into one?
Which slide?
26 and 27, also 24. So those 3 were what were smushed together to make 22 that we spent all the time on because it was kind of confusing. Now I see why, because it was 4 recommendations put into one.
Okay.
I see.
So I don't know that what we reworked actually reflects what the other 3 slides wanted to be in this one slide.
To me, I like it all on one. I like
Mhm,
ideas just here together.
mhm.
Then we can even build upon this if we need more feedback on assessor training instead of having it in 3 different slides. You see it all on this slide. I feel that we've addressed the other 3 slides in this one,
Okay.
but again, if you want to make more slides, I just want to make
No,
it
I just want to make sure that we're
fast. Yeah.
the intent and the depth of the others are able to be fully contained when we put them together.
The thing that's not addressed on slide 26 is the revision of program standard 5,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe that's in this area of the people who are talking
Yeah.
about, yeah, maybe. Because that wasn't our for this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Okay. Well,
Done.
then we're done.
We did good.
Yeah, not bad. It's 10:09. We're within the realms.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's the first time I've been.
Proud of us.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mhm. Thank you all. I'm going to link these so it's quicker for people to find. And when the numbers change, the slide numbers change.
What time did you say you were doing that?
An hour, but that was an hour from 9:05.
and then she came in and said, how much time do we have? She said, what do you need?
Yeah,
I was like, what, right. And she's like, maybe 15-ish. I was like, well, we'll try it. So
We did it.
We're good.
we're good.
We're good. Well, thanks all.
Yeah.
Anna Marie. May I speak now?
Yes.
Y'all are really waiting for me. Yes. Yes. I don't know. I'm saving my remarks for later.
Okay.
This was like, it's kind of music to my ears. I know it's really hard, but, and the thing that I think that I'm going to say is, I was thinking about it, all of your comments, how kind of this ethic of humanizing this experience while keeping it valid, reliable, and all of those things that we care about kind of resonated through the conversation. And I almost wish that others could listen in, right? Because sometimes you get an assessment and you think of it just as an assessment, something that nobody has well, reliable, valid, et cetera. But how does everybody experience it? Like, how do all of the folks involved experience it? And this conversation lends itself to answering that question. And then the other thing I was thinking about was that I really appreciated this also kind of ethic of shared responsibility, that it's the programs, it's the state, it's the commission, it's that, and we've been saying that for a long time, but we still play in different sandboxes, right? And this is an opportunity for us to just convene in the same sandbox. And right now we're sitting in different parts of the sandbox, but at some point, this TPA is that shovel and pail in the middle of it, right? That we can begin to work together. So it was just really hopeful. Because I have to say, and I know I'm being recorded here as I say it, I was skeptical about how this all was going to go, because we've had these conversations before. And sometimes when you legislate stuff, it makes it worse. It doesn't make it better. And I think the thing that we got right was getting the right people around the table. And I think the thing y'all got right is that you're not representing yourselves, you're representing your stakeholder group. And I love this. I see Kathy sometimes leaning back like this a little bit, because Juliet reminded us, right? There's some things you're just gonna have to give up. Like, if you are the outlier voice at this table, you should not be taking up too much space. Right. You need to open your ears a little bit more and consider the possibility. And at different times in the last day and a half, I've seen that happen. That's what we want, right? It was really good. To be reminded that what we're talking about and, the information that we tend to get are all the negatives. There are a lot of candidates who have a positive view. And I think it's really important to remember that we're talking about a small group when we talk about all these negatives. I just have to be reminded, because I know I've seen I think they shared it with us, some of the feedback from the candidates from the pilot, from the LPA, right? The second cycle. And again, some candidates are saying, yes, I learned a lot. It was a valuable experience. I felt supported, And I just think, a lot of the times we get this, fire and brimstone, doom and gloom about the assessment. And like you're saying, Anna Marie, sometimes an assessment isn't this, assessment, but making sure it's humanized is really, really important. But yeah, but I have to remind myself, we're talking, generally speaking, you never want to legislate something based upon the smallest, thing, right? and never forget, I guess, the importance of the reason we have the assessment in the first place.
Well, and also you don't want to change things just to be changing them.
That part.
Right,
That part.
let's change it with something that's equally
Crazy.
bad,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Mhm.
But I think your recommendations really will, you know, to the extent that they're adopted, will push programs their own design principles, right? So to your point about the educative value of formative exhibitions and things like that, for those folks that aren't doing that, even though you don't explicitly state it in the, but taken together, all of those recommendations point to, if you're really gonna do this, it kind of makes sense, embeddedness, it kind of makes sense to have these kind of formative experiences that lead to the submission, the final submission of this. So I think that's really cool. Cool, probably not the most academic word I could.
That's
That's good.
We get it, yeah.
We understand that.
That part.
Is it time?
Okay.